everyone. Today we have with us Mr. Filipe Themudo Barata. He is a full professor at the University of Évora, where he had taught several disciplines and seminars connected with history, heritage, and museology. And more specifically, he has been the chairholder of the UNESCO Chair in Intangible, Heritage, and Traditional Know-how. Thank you so much for being with us, Mr. Barata. I give you the floor.
Good morning to everybody. Okay, my words today has a subject, and the subject is I have organized a kind of title towards an agenda of discussion of ICH and the importance of national legislation. And I just want to begin these words with a personal statement about it. My personal statement regards the fact that I am a historian, but I must say I am a practitioner about heritage and projects a little bit all around the world. So let me say that I have some experience to see what each state has done about intangible heritage. And if I could say so, in the prehistory of my life, I have been I have a degree in law. So I forgot all the letters, but I still remember the music about the laws. And so it interests me. And about this, the first part will be of my words, it will be a kind of agenda, if you want, about ICH, and then I will talk about national legislations. Okay, the first part, it is about ICH agenda. More or less 20 years ago, in March 2001, I can read in The Guardian, the British newspaper, that the Talibans make explode the Bamlian Buddhas. And of course, we criticize them. Of course, we became quite, even with rage about this destruction of our heritage, worldwide heritage, because they belong to UNESCO. The interesting part is, more or less 20 years after that, in the framework of the movement Black Lives Matter, what we assist it is in the west part of the world, in our societies, the destruction of statues. They beheaded Christopher Columbus. They beheaded statues all over the world and throw them away in the river of Thames in London. The interesting part is why it's happened this. What can we do to understand first and then try to avoid this destruction of our heritage? Because this deals with a central part of the ICH. It is about the ICH safeguard and management, how to do this. And this became an important lesson that we criticize the Taliban. I criticize the Taliban, but then suddenly I have the same problem at home. The second thing that in my agenda I'd like very much to remember is that today, according to UNESCO and the experts in the subject, there are more or less 7,200 languages, dialects, and ways of speaking. The sad part of the story is that till the end of this century, the half of them will disappear. When we are talking about disappearing, it means that all the culture, that the language are the vehicle, all the cultures, they will disappear too. And I still remember when I saw epigraphies all over, a little bit all over in ancient civilizations. I still remember today how it is incredible these languages have disappeared, and nobody knows nothing about what's happened behind these languages. So these questions regards a subject very important, according my way of thinking. It is the survival of ICH itself and the need of changes of the convention. This is an interesting problem. Why? Because regarding the convention, all the state or all the partners should be states. I mean, the parts that sign the convention are the states. Of course, during the preparation of the convention, as you can imagine, many states refuse to say that the language was the ICH. And so we agree upon the bizarre idea that ICH is not the language is not the ICH, but it is the vehicle of the ICH. The problem is, in the UNESCO, there is an atlas of language in risk, but we understand very well that every day there are languages that are disappearing, and we must do, in the Convention of 2003, we must do something about this problem, because it means the survival of ICH itself. The third point of my agenda, a brief point of my agenda, regards the idea of preservation itself. Because the mainstream that are transmitted in the TV, in the schools, in the market, if I could say so, this mainstream is that there is a vibrant society nowadays, and things of the past, such as ICH, are not so interesting in our society. And this is a struggle between the life today and the importance of memories. I have stories about the memories, incredible stories about the memories that I have no time to tell, but it is an important problem and an important issue. Our idols, our examples, are all of them are today idols, examples, and we forgot our idols, our commitments of the past, and this could be and this regards ICH preservation. The fourth and the last one, because this is not my subject, it is the problem of the tourism. It's true that the ICH was thought at the beginning with a little bit, I should say, help to improve and to save and to ensure tourism flows. The problem is what is happened today. I work a little bit all around the world, and a small story, and make us understand what I'm talking about. It is about the problems of authenticity, the problems of the safeguard and the preservation, but especially authenticity and survival of the ICH also. I work in Cape Verde, and there are some women that do ceramics, and they do big ceramics to keep the potatoes, sweet potatoes, and so on. But when we arrived there some years later, they were producing small the ceramics, but in small shape, like 10 centimeters. And we asked them why you are doing this, because you are producer of the big ones. And they told me, well, it's very easy, professor. The tourists just buy small things. They don't buy big things. So step by step, they are forgetting not only how to do the big ones, but what they are doing in the society. This artificialization. And sometimes it's the opposite, is the industrialization of ICH. It's also an important issue regarding this problem. And I'd like very much to underline about ICH three things, especially about this agenda, the points of this agenda. The first one is identities change and merge with others. There is no rule nowhere that set out to us that identities don't change. They change, in fact. And by the way, I have been professor in Agrigento, and in Agrigento, I organized a little bit a kind of story of a Sicilian that show the history of Sicily, that show that the identities of Sicily along the story has changed all the time. Well, the second thing that I'd like very much to underline is groups of reference, the elites, if you want. They adapt themselves to the reality, and they are doing this all the time. And the third thing that I'd like very much to underline before entering my subject is it is important it is important to remember, and don't forget this, ICH has all the concept of heritage is a social construction. Each society decides which is own ICH. Of course, this is a problem because the profile of our societies, they are changing. I give you just to understand what I'm talking about when I say they are changing. I give you two examples. One from Italy. Palermo is where a lot of refugees enter, migrants enter in Europe. Okay, Palermo has 5% of foreigners. But because most of the foreigners go to the north, Hanover, it is a city more or less, a German city more or less with the size of Palermo, 600,000 inhabitants. They have 20% of foreigners. Of course, this changed the reality of how to manage such a difference in our cities. This creates new problems in our cities. It is very easy to understand that people that represent this 20% wants different things from the people that represent the other 80s. So how to manage this diversity in our cities? This is one of the most important things that I think it happened nowadays. And by the way, the United Nations organization has a program called Habitat. It deals with this kind of problems, and I challenge you to the students and to the people that are interested about the subject and to visit these websites of the United Nations organizations and this program Habitat. They are very interesting and show us how the problem is deep in our societies. Okay. But as far as I told you before, I came here to speak about the problems of law itself. I mean, Convention 2003, and how the practices of the problem has been organized. And in this part, I will talk about 4 problems. The first one is about the concept. The second one is about the inventory. The third one is about the process control. And the last one is about the Portuguese ICH laws that I will try to compare with others. Okay, first the concept. It is very interesting. I have no time to tell a little bit about the history of ICH, how we arrived to this 2003 convention in the terms of concept, but it is a very interesting story. But I'd like very much to remember the Article 2 of the convention. The Article 2 of the convention, where we can see and understand, should I say, a concept, or at least a list of characteristics that ICH should have to be considered ICH. The first one is we are talking about a know-how. The first thing of ICH. The second thing it is, this ICH should be alive nowadays. If it is not alive anymore, it doesn't belong to the category of ICH. It belongs to a historical category. By the way, let me tell you, if I go to the list of UNESCO, it's true that many of them, of these practices that are in the list, I can identify a couple of them that have been disappeared and that were they were reborn because of the tourism. And this is an important thing, but in terms of concept, it should be alive. The third thing is that the community recognize it as an heritage, this know-how. The fourth is, and this is important, this ICH include the idea of innovation itself. ICH doesn't mean that I just produce or I just do the things like my grandfathers do. What it is normal is each generation can and should add is will, is a way to see the world, is a fashion as you want. But so it is the ICH itself, it should include these innovations. The fifth it is that communities, groups, and even persons, they are the owners and they should control the process. And this is perhaps the most important issue that we can discuss nowadays. But there is more, three that I should say they are complementary to this. The first one, they are, should I say, formal or administrative, even somehow administrative. The first one is they should be included in the national inventory. The second one, they should respect the idea of peace and human rights. And you should prove, and you must prove that they are transmitted from a generation to the other. This idea of human rights is very interesting, very, very interesting. But because the idea of human rights, it's, it's more complex than we think. And even today, comes another idea. It is, should I say, the rights of the animal that also is mixed with the human rights and provoke a little and makes the problem much more complex than it was before, just when we were dealing with human rights itself. I mean, regarding the man. For instance, I give you an example what I'm talking about. Perhaps everybody have heard about bullfights. Okay, nowadays it was impossible to inscribe bullfights in the list of the representative list of the UNESCO. It was impossible because of this idea of animal rights and peace and so on. Okay, so the second thing that I compromised myself to deal with was the inventory. I must go fast, or at least I lose all the process. The second thing it was the inventory. In fact, the Article 13 of the Convention obliged each country to have an national inventory. But the interesting part it is the idea of national inventory. It is very much more complicated than you think, because there is inventories of produced by association recognized by UNESCO with capability to do this inventory. First thing, there is national inventories produced by the central office of the authority of the state. And there is sometimes no national inventory. For instance, I give you it is an interesting thing. For instance, as till 2019, because I don't follow up the situation after this time. But if I remember well, and I'm quoting by heart. It is, if I remember well, till 2019, Italy has not a national inventory, has an inventory of each region. I remember the first when I have done the first project in Europe about the ICH. It was in 2004. It was a inventory called a project called Medinch. It was run by a Italian authority, and we were dealing with the Sicilian inventory produced in Sicily. There was another inventories of other regions, but there was no national inventory itself. And it was very interesting because it is, for instance, in the United States, there is not an inventory at all. There is no federal inventory. In France, the inventories with the laws are a little bit different from in the other countries. So what I want to mean about that, it is the need and the compromise to have an inventory. The problem is much more complicated, is what to put there in the inventory and who is keeping the inventory. Because don't forget, in the convention, it said that the groups, persons, and communities should control the process. But if you have an inventory to what it is there, what it is, what have changed the group, persons, and the community, when it is the central offices of the state, they don't allow that the communities they control the process. So there is a contradiction between what is coming in the law and what it is the reality of the situation. It is a very interesting thing. And it is this is why it's important the process control. I call the process control. It is Article 15 of the Convention. The Article 15 about the Convention deals with the idea, the mandatory idea, that it was groups, communities, and persons that should control the process of inventory, management, and the process of because the process could change, the traditional how the ICH could change, they will, and they should be the responsible for that. And the problem is how to bring these communities, these groups, and these persons to the control of the process. And the second question is, do really the states are accomplishing this idea of to let these communities control the process? Well, and this is why I think it is important to speak about the Portuguese legislation. Because somehow, if you want, it is a good example of good intentions, goodwill, but a very bad legislation in the end of the day. Why I'm saying that? Okay, after ratification of the Convention of 2003, in 2009, comes out a decree that it was about how to incorporate the convention, the ICH Convention, in the Portuguese law. The convention, the process was quite open in these times. I mean, it was open in the sense that there was a national entities, institutions that was recognized by UNESCO, and they could do their own inventory. And there was in Portugal a very interesting one called Memoria Media that is still existing. They have a very interesting national inventory. But the problem is that the state has a very heavy machine to do the process of recognition and classification of each ICH. Look, I have some experience about to fulfill these files, and it was really something that I feel myself a little bit tortured because I should fulfill I don't know how many files, how many pages, and so on. And in the end of the process, I was not sure what I have done. I was somehow evaluated by the central authorities. And during many years, I must say, only one thing was in the national inventory produced by the authorities. And the interesting part at the same time, it is that most of the candidates to the classification of ICH, what they do, in fact, what they do, it was they inscribe themselves in the private inventories recognized by UNESCO and not in the official one, because it was much more operational, if you want. And with the ICH, it is important to remember that we don't have, like the natural and like the built heritage, we don't have operational institutions with guidelines of operation control, such as e-commerce, for instance, to the built heritage. In the IHH, we don't have this kind of a referee all over, global referee. We don't have these operational guidelines and the long-term practice that could take out some conclusions. So in Portugal, with this law, what's happened, it was we prefer to inscribe ourselves in a private, if you want. It was belong to the university, this national inventory, but it was there. We prefer to inscribe, not in the national one. And nevertheless, this goodwill of this law, they try, what they have tried to do, it is to organize a kind of should I say council, where experts to advise authorities this was in the national one, the public one, a kind of council where the expert, not the communities, but the expert could discuss the advantages or not to classify the ICH. Because of this movement that persons, groups, and individuals prefer the private one, the private inventory, in 2015 comes out a law. It was published, a new law during the holidays. I still remember this. During the month of August 2015, it was published a law stating that this council was disappearing. And the second thing more important was that to run and to present something to the representative list of ICH to the UNESCO, it was mandatory to be inscribed in the national inventory produced by the authorities. So what was happening is, for instance, if you go to see the fado, it was a music, a popular, very important music type of music in Portugal. They are not in the national inventory. They were in the first one because they were before they were classified before 2015. So they went to this private inventory. I was responsible of the falconry, for national falconry, for instance. We published that in this inventory. Well, afterwards, my students who used to say, "Professor, you said we should fulfill the law and so on." So I inscribed in the national inventory. But nevertheless, the problem was, and still is, there is a national inventory. Let me tell you something that I think it is important to remember. Of course, that most of the states around the world, not only in Portugal, this is just an example, the public authorities never share his power with the others. And this is one of the problems we have in the end of the day to run ICH, when the convention said that the communities, groups, and persons should run the process and control the process. My last conclusion is we should think how very carefully how to change a little bit the Convention of 2003, not destroying it, but improving it a little bit. And I think nowadays, all over the world, it is possible to organize not only a majority, but a consensus about the idea to change some parts of this convention. And I hope it will be possible in the future. Thank you.